What's up, guys, and welcome to Free Pilot Training. Today, I've got Seth with me here, and he's going to answer, should I buy an airplane? Should you buy an airplane? He's also got this secret document he just showed me today that's going to help you with the process of buying an airplane if you decide that it's right for you. All right, guys, so the big question I know all of you have is, should you buy an airplane? And specifically, we're going to talk about should you buy an airplane to learn how to fly here in just a minute. But for now, we're just going to focus on should you buy an airplane. So the first thing, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit, is cost versus rental.
Yeah, that's where you need to start from. Because first of all, if you're thinking about buying an airplane, go out and rent an airplane and make sure that this is the airplane lifestyle is for you, because you're going to learn a lot of things about airplanes when you start renting them. So I wouldn't ever suggest someone who doesn't have any experience with flying to go out and purchase an airplane. Owning an airplane is a big responsibility. There's a lot of required expense that you're just not used to with any other vehicle. So what I use the $10,000 number. So I say, if you're thinking about buying an airplane, go and, if you can, rent an airplane for an entire year and see how much you spend. If you spend less than $10,000, I would continue to rent. If you spend more than $10,000, I would consider purchasing an airplane.
And where's that $10,000 number coming from?
So, I didn't just make the number up. This comes from years of experience of owning and operating airplanes. But so that's all your $10,000 is your fixed expenses, and that includes maintenance, storage like a hangar, and then insurance. Those are all your fixed costs. You have to get the plane in annual every year. You have to have a hangar for it for the most part. I mean, there are some exceptions there. Or if you live in a really good area that, maybe you're in a dry Arizona type place, you might be able to just get away with a tie down. But for most of the countries, I would highly suggest you protect your investment by putting it in a hangar. And then you're going to have to get insurance for it. If you're not getting, you don't have to technically, but you really have to have insurance. And so the annual and fixed maintenance expenses are going to be around $3,000. The hangar or storage is going to be around $3,000, and then so that gets you to $6,000. The insurance is going to be around $2,000, $2,000 to $3,000. It could be more depending on the airplane.
Especially if you're a student pilot. I know, like I was telling you earlier, Mike, whenever we were getting his private pilot's license, we went in together and bought that Cessna 172 we have. And it was a little bit more, I want to say it was almost twice as much, since he was a student pilot. And then once he got his private pilot's license, it went down quite a bit. So that's an expense you have to think about too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of your planned costs. And then I like to tell everybody budget for about $2,000 of unplanned expenses. If you lose a cylinder and have to replace that, or if you lose a vacuum pump or any of those life-limited parts.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this a little bit ago, but I was talking to a mechanic the other day, and he was saying that, a lot of these things, you're calling them life-limited parts, like a turn and slip indicator. A lot of times those have like a specific amount of hours that they last, and you can just basically count on about 500 hours. Once you hit that time, it's basically toast at that point.
Yeah, there's a high likelihood of failure at that point. Yeah. Vacuum pumps are a great example. I think the manufacturer recommends most vacuum pumps be replaced at 500 hours.
Yeah.
There's nothing obligatory for a Part 91 pilot to replace those, or owner-operator to replace those exactly at 500 hours. But if you choose to fly them past 500 hours, the chances of you having an in-flight failure, increase quite a bit.
Okay, so the next thing is, where to store it. Where should we store these things if we decide that buying an airplane is right for us?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it just a second ago, but, you could, in theory, just have a tie down.
Yeah.
The problem with this is if you're buying an airplane, if you're going the route of aircraft ownership, you're probably thinking of it as an investment. And every month that or let's say every year that you have your plane unhangared is going to impact the resale value of your investment, if that's what you're considering it. So, you're going to have more problems with corrosion. You're going to have more issues with, critters getting in your airplane, mud daubers and birds and all. There's a lot of problems with keeping it out in the element. So I would highly recommend that you keep this investment inside of a hangar. And I think A basic T hanger, anything enclosed, doesn't have to be heated, doesn't necessarily have to have electrical or water, but of course those are all good things, right? And I think part of it is a safety issue as well, because if you're flying in, either hot weather or cold weather, and you're out on the ramp, you're kind of in the elements when you're doing your walk around. You're a little uncomfortable. Maybe you rush through things because it's uncomfortable, because you're uncomfortably hot or cold. And in the hangar, you're just away from the elements. You can spend more time doing a thorough pre-flight, post-flight. You can spend more time with your airplane because it's more comfortable. So I think it's safer to keep it in a hangar.
And if it is heated, it's already kind of somewhat warm as far as like heating your engine and stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. If you're in a cold climate, and where I see tie downs commonly are in like the Phoenix area.
Yeah,
a lot of aircraft just tied down, and you can get away with that because it's really dry and humid, or dry and arid. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Not humid. It's very humid here, so like keeping it tied down on, in Minnesota, probably not a good plan.
Yeah, I've seen some of these like really nice covers on airplanes, and I didn't know if that. Obviously, we got the walk around stuff that you kind of mentioned, but how effective is an airplane cover that covers the cockpit and stuff?
Yeah, I think I look at those covers as more I'm on the road with my airplane, and I don't have a hangar, and I'm going to leave it on the ramp. I like to take the family to Key West every year. And when I go to Key West, being able to button up the airplane while we're there for a week makes me feel a lot better that I'm protecting the paint from the direct sunlight, because my planes don't spend a lot of time outside if they're not flying. So I look at those covers more as you're on the road traveling with your plane and you want to protect it from the elements when you can't have a hangar, not as a replacement of a hangar.
Okay, this moves into the next question. What kind of airplane should a person buy, or what's the perfect airplane for, I guess let's say, a student pilot?
Yeah, so that $10,000 number that I listed before, that's like an effective airplane, which I look as a effective airplane is really kind of a 3-seat airplane where you can actually take a cross country somewhere, and you can do some flight training in it. Right? You could definitely get cheaper airplanes, but those don't really. Those are more recreational vehicles. Like I've got a old 1939 Taylorcraft. I bought it for I bought it for less than $10,000. Just purchased it for less, and its fixed cost is a lot less than $10,000 for me every year. But I can't get in that plane and take the family anywhere. No. Really, that's just within 50 miles of the airport. That's kind of where it likes to be. Can't do a lot of flight training in it. You can have a lot of fun with it. So, you have to define your mission very clearly first. And most people's mission isn't just to stay recreational around the airport. It's, I want to go get the $100 hamburger. I want to do some flight training. Maybe I want to take vacation with the family. So definitely for a student pilot, obviously the 172 is what comes to my mind.
Yeah,
they're just so everywhere. Yeah.
I mean,
the prices right now for the 170, this is 2023.
Yeah. Prices
are sort of leveling off, but man, they're really high.
I mean, I'm not sad that they're not leveling off, because, we purchased one 3 years ago, two and a half years ago, and it's just that investment has paid off. But like, if it were up to me and I were looking at a trainer right now, I'd be more looking at the Cherokee 140s and 180s because they're just, a lot of times they're half the cost.
Yeah. So the Cherokee fleet, that's or the Piper fleet of trainers, the Cherokee, we'll just say it's the PA-23, right?
Yeah. Or 28.
The PA-28 fleet. The PA-28 fleet, there's so many options out there, from like 140 horsepower all the way up to 200 horsepower.
Yeah.
So I think you can get those cheaper. Something we're going to talk about, in a pre-purchase inspection, there's a major airworthiness directive that affects specifically the training fleet of the PA-28 with the wing spar inspection. That could have big impacts on the availability of those planes, and maybe accepting a little bit more risk buying an older PA-28 that's been in a training fleet specifically. So if it's been beat up at a flight school, that would impact my decision to buy one. I'm not hating on Piper, but that would impact my decision.
Yeah, that's something really good because, I don't have a lot of experience with, the airworthiness directives like I should. And so that's something obviously we'll talk about it a little bit today, but I think in a future episode.
ADs are big.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that
We
more.
need to stay away from that rabbit trail. It turns into more of an interstate.
Okay, so talked about that a little bit. What should I be thinking about when it comes to maintenance?
Man, you really need to have your maintenance figured out before you purchase the airplane. That's the bottom line is don't buy an airplane and hope that you get the hangar situation and the maintenance situation figured out. I know we kind of already talked about hangars, but hangars are really hard to find right now in a lot of places. So you might be able to find a hangar, but it might be 45 minutes away from where you live or even further. So getting the hangar identified, that's important. And then getting a relationship with an A&P that you trust that's going to be able to complete all of your scheduled and unscheduled maintenance for you. And kind of geographically, where are they located in relation to your plane?
Yeah.
Are you looking at call-out fees because maybe the A&P doesn't live at the same or doesn't operate at the same airport where your plane's at. So now if you have a flat tire, you might be down 2 or 3 days waiting on an A&P to come help you out.
And this kind of goes into a little bit different subject, but a lot of that stuff you can do yourself, and that'd be part 43 where you'd find some of that information on some of the stuff you can do yourself.
Yeah.
And you were saying that was Appendix D.
Well, Appendix D of Part 43, that's where you'll find like the 100-hour requirements, the 100-hour annual. We could talk about that as like a pre-purchase inspection sort of guideline. You're not. We can talk about that in a second, but your preventative maintenance you can accomplish as an owner, and that's also in Part 43, Appendix A, is where the preventative maintenance is. Yeah,
like changing the oil.
Right.
You can change your own tires, I think. I can't think of them all.
Yeah, it lists, and that list isn't totally exclusive. You can kind of do a lot of things that are associated with that list of items, but really you're kind of that is the list of things you can do. Changing a flat tire is one of those things. However, that doesn't relieve you from having to document that properly. So if you've never owned an airplane and you're like, I'm mechanically inclined, I can change this tire, pump the brakes a little bit, so to speak, get some guidance from an A&P on all of these tasks before you try to do it yourself. Even though legally you can, there's a lot of ways that you can do this improperly, and best case you'll get lucky. Kind of a step above that, you're gonna ruin that new tire that you just bought, which isn't cheap. Worst case, you're gonna turn it into an accident.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, because documenting this stuff, yes, you can do change the tires yourself. When I go to buy an airplane and I start looking at these logbooks and I'm like, well, when was the tires changed? Well, we're not really sure, because somebody didn't document that. And, I think that increases the value of your aircraft if you ever go to sell it, because you can easily see where this was changed, or you can easily see where that was changed.
Yeah. And
even though it's something you can do yourself, like I've looked at airplanes to buy before and they didn't say when they changed the oil. And I think that's kind of a foul. Even though it takes up space in the logbook, I'd rather have that information personally.
Yeah, even buying a car, if you go out and buy a used car and you buy it, you let's say you have 2 cars that you're looking at. One car, the owner gives you this binder and it has every oil change that car's ever had.
Yeah.
Every receipt from the shop, it's all in there. And the other guy's just standing there with the keys like, yeah, I've totally taken care of it. Even if it's the same car, I'm like, well, I'm going to trust the one that has documentation. Yeah. That's worth something, right? At least I know, he has the receipts to show he's taking care of this car.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy did. Maybe he's a gearhead and it's better car than the other one.
You don't know.
But, you got to be as objective as possible. And with the documentation, that definitely helps.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question of the day. Should I buy an airplane to learn how to fly? Yeah,
I kind of talked about that with, the whole, if you think about $10,000, that's about 65 hours. I can't remember if I went through the math, but, let's say $150 average
Yeah.
nationally to rent an airplane, somewhere around there, $150 wet. And then it takes, on average, about 65 to 70 hours to learn how to fly. You know, I know the minimums are lower than that, but very few people get their license right at the minimums.
Yeah.
They're typically going over, so 65, 70 hours. Of course, you can play with these numbers all day, but you're coming up around $10,000 in rentals
Yeah.
just to get your private pilot's license. So that you're like, hey, Seth, I'm going to spend $10,000, so I'm going to go out and buy an airplane. And on the face of it, this sounds really good because you can go out, you buy your airplane. Let's say you spend $30,000 on a decent airplane. You learn how to fly in it. You turn around. After 65 hours, you really didn't depreciate the value of the plane.
Yeah.
Maybe you even helped it a little bit. You know, if it was a hangar queen, somebody sees that, oh, it's flown 65 hours this year. That actually helps resale value a little bit. But 65 hours isn't like you're not taking value out of the plane with that few of hours. So you bought it for 30, you turn around and you sell it for 30. And then all you're out is fuel and instructor fees. And you're like, wow, I just got my pilot's license for basically a quarter of the cost that would have got, taken otherwise.
Here's the question I had, and looking at it from a CFI standpoint, a lot of these airfields, they have like really regimented schedules, and the students a lot of times have issues getting into a plane because the schedule is just cram packed. Do you see this as like a big advantage, owning your own airplane?
Sure. I mean, if you can identify an instructor that has kind of open availability, and you have your own airplane, if everything works out, it's going to be a really good experience. The problem is, what if you're 20 hours into your training and you lose a cylinder? Well, you're the owner.
Yeah.
You're responsible for that now. So it's going to cost you about $2,000 in a couple weeks to get that cylinder changed out. So now your $30,000 plane, now you've got 32 invested in it, plus all the fuel and stuff, okay?
Yeah.
And then a vacuum pump goes out, right? There's another $1,000 with labor and parts, and you're down a few more weeks, and now you're, $34,000 into this airplane. And, tire changes, oil changes, all that adds up, and at the end of it, you bought the plane for 30. You spent another $10,000 extra on maintenance, which wouldn't be uncommon.
Yeah.
Let's say you just spend $5,000 extra. So you're in the plane for $35,000, and you go to resell it, and you can't sell it for $35,000. You can sell it for $30,000.
Yeah.
So you didn't get all your money back. Plus, you had to deal with all the headaches of owning an airplane.
Yeah.
Right, and there might have been delays there, and so
This is one that I think, so you're an examiner, and so this is a perfect question to ask, I think. If I go into a check ride as a student and I bring my maintenance logs to you, is it usually easier for somebody who owns an airplane, or is it easier for like a school that's taking care of everything? Which situation do you find easier usually for the student?
That's a good question, and easy to answer, and I don't know, maybe you're expecting this, maybe not. But by far, the best logbooks that I see are from schools. So if you're going to a school, they've got a full-time A&P that's working on just their airplanes. And this plane goes through dozens of check rides, sometimes dozens of check rides a week,
Yeah.
So a bunch of examiners are looking at these logs all the time. So they're correct.
Yeah.
For the most part, especially if I've got a relationship with the school. I know, I probably know their AMPIA. I've done check rides in this plane before, so I know that plane's history. If you show up, Joe Blow, out of nowhere, I've never seen your plane before. First of all, qualifying that airplane is going to take me longer than it does at a school I've got.
Yeah, because you're obligated to look at the maintenance forms again because you've already done it at another school.
And this is a brand new airplane I've never seen before that I'm fixing to trust my life to. So and then legally on top of that, I've got to make sure that it's qualified. And especially if it's a private pilot, I mean, you and I were talking about ADs.
Yeah.
You're an experienced pilot. You're an instructor.
Yeah.
And you struggle with understanding exactly how ADs, like where to find them. There's DPEs that struggle with this.
Where to find them is the hardest part by far.
Yeah, as an owner, man, I had to basically stop a check ride. We couldn't even start the check ride because somebody showed up with a plane that didn't have any of the ADs complied with.
Oh, no.
I mean, we sat and we spent an hour in this office trying to figure out if, because I'm like, well, they were assuring me, oh, my mechanic takes care of everything. Like, well, I understand you feel that way.
Yeah.
Prove it to me. Show me where in the logs are these ADs complied with, and they couldn't. So we couldn't start the test. So that's a big responsibility you're taking as an owner, especially a private pilot owner trying to show up to a check ride with good logbooks for a personally owned plane. I'm not saying it's impossible, not at all. It's just a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I know, because I've gone and looked at planes to purchase, and the first thing I'm looking at is the airworthiness directives, the engine time to engine overhaul, and it's a struggle to look through those, especially privately owned airplanes that somebody is just like, well, I did this and throw it in the book. I did this and throw it in the book. They don't like spend time to organize in any way.
Oh yeah, I open up the logbooks and like receipts and work orders just fall out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I appreciate you keeping all this, but it really makes getting to the actual legal airworthiness of the plane kind of difficult, because I'm going through all these receipts from aircraft spruce trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it's not enjoyable to do that stuff yourself, I don't think anyways, but maybe some people enjoy that, I don't know.
Yeah, and people do this, so I feel like I'm kind of poo-pooing going out and buying your own airplane to learn how to fly in. And I am a little bit, but some people do it successfully.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some people do this successfully. I just think, in my experience, I've seen more people go out and purchase airplanes before they were really ready to own an airplane, and it didn't turn out ideal.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could see one advantage in that, you make this huge investment, and then like you're kind of stuck following through at that point. So I guess there's an advantage in that, but
the one exception, I guess, would be you get your private and maybe your instrument, and now you're sitting here with 150 hours.
Yeah.
And you want to build time. At that point, you're a 150-hour pilot. You know a little bit more about how this whole aviation thing works. If you go out and buy a 150 to build some time in, I could get behind that a little bit more than somebody that really doesn't know anything about aviation buying an airplane to get their private license in. So that would be an exception. Another exception would be kind of like my daughter's case. I'm teaching Brinkley how to fly. So let's say I didn't have a flight school already and I didn't already own some airplanes. If I wanted to buy a plane as a pilot for my non-pilot, child to learn how to fly in, that's another thing that I see a lot.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, Dad bought this Cessna so he could fly it, but then I'm also going to learn how to fly in that. Okay, I can get behind that, because at least somebody related to that plane knows how this whole thing works. And then you're not relying on this untrained pilot. Yeah,
and then also you got to think about your final goals too, because if your goal is to become a commercial pilot with an instrument rating and you go out and buy a VFR only airplane, then you're limited on what you can do up to that point.
Yeah. And that's I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people will say, well, I found this plane for a really good deal, so I'm going to go buy it, but it doesn't have any avionics, and I'm going to put the avionics I want in it.
Yeah.
And that's going to increase the value, so when I go to resell it, I'll make more money. Well, the truth about avionics is it increases resale value by about 50% on average of what you spend. So if you buy a $30,000 airplane, you put $20,000 worth of avionics, and yes, that is a realistic number. It is very difficult to do like a $10,000 avionics upgrade. You probably can, but you're definitely going to be spending more than 10. But let's just say 10. So you go out, buy it for 30, put 10,000 worth of avionics. That plane's now worth 35. It's not worth 40.
Yeah.
Unless, there's a lot of other variables in there. If you got a really good deal on it, maybe it's worth more. Yeah. But you're only going to recover about 50% of the investment on avionics. So it's better to buy the plane that has the avionics in it that you need.
Yeah. Okay, so what's this secret little handbook that we were talking about earlier that you
Yeah, so
shared
if
with
you're
me?
thinking about buying an airplane, and if you're, in fact, on my CFI plan of action, when you're becoming a CFI, I actually have this, I make all my CFIs teach me a lesson on this handbook because I think it's kind of a hidden gem of a handbook. But it's called Plain Sense, which is it's a play on words. Somebody at the FAA was trying to be cute, and it didn't turn out well because nobody, like, if I just tell you, what do you think the Plain Sense manual is about?
I've never even heard of this thing until you just pointed it out.
Yeah, the title isn't very descriptive. It's not very helpful. It should be called the Aircraft Owner's Handbook.
Yeah.
Because this is the handbook that the FAA publishes that tells you how to be an aircraft owner. I think the best way to see what's in it is I'm going to read through some of the chapter titles, and it also includes checklists that you can use
When you're buying an airplane.
Yeah. So Chapter 1, Aircraft Owner Responsibilities. Chapter 2, Buying an Aircraft. Chapter 3, Airworthiness Certificate. Chapter 4, Aircraft Registration. Chapter 5, Special Flight Permits. Chapter 6, Light Sport Aircraft. Chapter 7, Aircraft Maintenance. Chapter 8, Maintenance Records. So it goes on. We've got 11 chapters, 2 appendices. This handbook, if you read this handbook before you buy your airplane, you're going to be so much better prepared. There's examples of the temporary registration and bill of sale, right? Those are the two pieces of paperwork you fill out when you buy an airplane. There's examples of how to fill those out in here.
I did not even know. We just learned the hard way how to do this stuff, and I wish that I knew this document existed.
Yeah.
And the FAA, people kind of give them a bad rep, but their handbooks are awesome. Like,
no, yeah, they really are. Yeah, it's a good
handbook is awesome. The Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge is awesome.
Yeah,
it's written for like a 7-year-old.
Yeah, they're really good. Page 42 of this manual, and maybe we can pull it up on screen here. But it's a buying an aircraft checklist. So it's a checklist for buying an airplane. Now, I would certainly add some stuff to this checklist. However, this is a really good starting point for buying an airplane. If you're thinking about, well, what do I need to be checking for?
So is this a substitution for a pre-buy inspection?
Well, I mean, do you want to talk about a pre-buy or a pre-purchase inspection?
I think we should save that for the next video.
Okay, we can save that.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the next video, we are going to be talking about 7 things that you should know before buying an airplane, and I'm going to have Seth with me on that one too. And we're also going to talk about some stuff on his channel, and I think we're also going to go into airworthiness directives because I need some help on that.
All right. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one. This is the next video if you want to check that out.
See you guys.
Yep.